This is The Way It Is. I'm Sophia Wanuna with Benji Ndolo and Ambrose Weda, and we want to get into the proposal to pull KDF from Somalia. Raila calling for the same, saying that perhaps is one of the avenues that needs to be looked at in, this war against terror that Kenya finds herself in.
Needless to say, Raila is a pretty media-savvy kind of guy. I am told by a lot of his handlers that he follows, different arguments carefully, that he takes some of us, he listens to what some of us propose. I am on record saying moving into Somalia was absolutely the wrong thing to do. I don't care what different, presuppositions are made or what different, justifications out there are made. War is big money, is big business. Us being in Somalia sets us up as some sort of target against, the Somalian people. It doesn't help that this whole operation, and by the way, as we talked about security, whether there's no real reason for retaining people like Lenku when the whole country, if you ran a poll in 2 seconds, he'd be lucky to get 16% approval from Kenyans in general. So once these sweeps have happened, Sophia in Isli and all over the country, and Somalis are up in arms talking about extortion, which is why Raila went there last week, and you can see how he was received. There's absolutely no reason to continue as a policy matter, to be seen as an occupier force, to continue to spend the amount of money we're spending. What you have to do is you have to secure your borders. You have to look at who's inside Kenya, who's coming, how and why, for what reason. Secure your borders, mind your business, put your resources to your citizens here, and be a good neighbor insofar as taking in genuine refugees, rehabilitating them, giving them support, etc., but not putting in your occupier force in another country where they now are accused of trading in black markets in Kismayo and what have you. And us being Kenyans and knowing who we are, our ambition and what have you, there's no reason to have a country that is viewed as majority Christian to be in Somali, which is majority Muslim, to give fuel to madrasas, to say, look at the kafirs and what they're doing to us, and you must fight them in this and this way, with grenades exploding everywhere. Our troops must come out of Somalia. It's not valuable.
Sophia, let me for a minute speak as a student of economics. And ask you and every Kenyan that if you look inside this studio and inside your household, and as you come to work, you drive in a car, you must be able to see that all the things you see around came and continue to pass through the port of Mombasa. These terrorists technically blocked the port of Mombasa by way of piracy inside the international waters at the Somali. If you take all the way from Egypt, the biggest port other than Cape Town is the port of Mombasa, the busiest, the biggest economic hub.
Right. Now,
this is what they interfered with. They were technically stifling Kenya to zero. And what advantage did they have? They had a safe haven in a country which did not have a system. Now, they became so courageous that they came home now. They were even coming home and looking for tourists and grabbing them.
Right.
So apart from our goods and trade, international, the reason why Kenya has bigger advantages over Uganda is because of the port of Mombasa. Now, they stifled that one. Then, they now took our tourists. They again went to interfere with them. Looking at it economically, it was therefore quite in order to look for them. And where were they? They were in Somalia. And what is the solution? Fight them, overpower them, put a working system that you can deal with. He is talking about a neighbor. There is no neighbor there unless you have a government. That is one. Speaking as a lawyer, you do not go to Somali, do a job halfway, and come back. The money spent would have been lost. Military strategy, you quit when you are supposed to quit. You quit when it is probable to quit. You don't run away because people are making noise at home. Even if that will cost a government. In the US, George Bush, the senior Bush, did the Iraq war. During the war, his ratings were very high. He lost to Bill Clinton. Because when people start seeing the coffins coming home, now there's a like, wow, this is terrible. And then when you have internal opposition leaders now like CORD saying, bring back home, yet they know very well that even if Raila Odinga was the commander-in-chief, he would not just go and collect the boys and bring them back home. He would have a strategy. Therefore, the best option for this country, economically, militarily, is to finish the job in Somalia. Let there be a functioning, efficient government that will block out these rogues. Then, as we do this, we have to pay the price also. Our boys die there, we spend money, but you spend money to gain money. You lose lives to protect other lives. Eventually, as you can see the terrorists around, they put pressure, but you can see they are now throwing grenades helter-skelter. They are no longer planning it the Westgate style. That means they are on the run. We will eliminate them. But you cannot just say, bring. For Raila, it is good. When now the government is weak, you take all the mud and throw at it. This one, they can't do security, bring our boys home, the foods are expensive. To make the government so unpopular, then to say, call elections today, to show you people you will win. That we are also budgeting with 2017. We shall have brought the boys home. We shall have done everything. There will be security. There will be food on the table. Then we get the tyranny of numbers. And again, round one.
When you see there's a promo that has been running, an advert as well, the president talking very tough on security and the CCTV project, which now House Committee has put on hold, yes. You know, procurement questions as well being raised on the same. Did that surprise you that that was put on hold?
It didn't surprise me. What you've had, a lot of the debate you've seen on social media is that the minute you saw the president himself advertising a security system pushed by a private company in the private sector, Safaricom, then you knew something was wrong with it. What critics are saying...
What was wrong with it?
Everything. I mean...
What was wrong about the... Wasn't he reassuring Kenyans?
14 billion shillings. Where was the tender done? How do you qualify? Do you just take a 14 billion shilling after one meeting in State House and award it to a company? What critics are saying is that it's time now for payback for all those who helped do whatever they did during the elections.
So do you have evidence that it was one meeting that happened and they were given the tender? Don't be again so simplistic.
Do you have evidence on who took rumors?
I'm just saying, if you're going to say that, you need to just justify the same.
Do you have evidence on who took golden bag money?
I have
Do you have evidence on who took Anglo-leasing money?
Do not miss the
evidence
issue.
Argument is garbage and it simplifies.
Really? It's garbage, Benji?
It's garbage because it cheapens a very, very serious issue and attempts to rubbish it. You're talking about public money. You're talking about, here's one proposal I gave last week, for example. I just came from Mombasa, and Mombasa is 500 kilometers from Nairobi. Have you thought about putting 2 patrol cars every 20 kilometers? That's 50 patrol cars, 60 patrol cars. Patrol cars with uniform. That's 2 each every 25 kilometers. There's many, many things we can do. We're in a country where a lot of police officers are allocated 4 liters of fuel a day in Karachuonyo, in Kapenguria, and where have you. And you want to go and run and put cameras, the president advertising it, you don't know how the tender was done and whatnot, only for the Legal Affairs Committee to say, wait a minute, and the Security Committee. And now, once again, because of this kind of reckless handling, after he has done the advertising and paid for that, and done the launch, so to speak, once again it's suspended. What has Uhuru touched that hasn't been suspended? It is so sickening and embarrassing. I cannot even believe that he himself is tolerating this kind of nonsense.
It's really embarrassing, as he says, for a president, you know, to have gone out, there's all these adverts on newspapers of the press, and like then to have this kind of a move then come, a suspension. Because you imagine by the time the president is getting involved, you know, it's about...
I imagine all of them have the casual attitude of Wakili Weda.
I would like you to listen. Listen good.
For what?
Listen good.
Listen to what?
Listen,
the president and the presidency deals with policy issues. I would like the security cameras, blah, blah, blah. Then they go to the implementation. Now, whenever there is 100 million and above, That is called a gravy, and it moves like a train. You get it? And as the train moves, there are several Kenyans and foreigners who wants to get a bit of the gravy.
Do you have evidence?
So as they do that, they try to derail the train. But if you look at the whole concept, the only institution that the government has control over, which also has the capability of doing what is supposed to be done, is Safaricom. But because there's the tender, you have to tender, everybody has to tender, and even Benji Ndolo will tender, so that the tender box is very big and full.
But isn't that what
capitalism is about?
To feel that there was an opportunity given to everybody.
They do, and they're entitled.
Yeah.
They do, and they're right.
And I do tell
you understand? They do, and they're right in demanding that. But remember now, when you are dealing with security issues,
why Safaricom?
Here, just listen. Here in Kenya, in the United States of America, the world over, when you are dealing with deep security, you don't put it in the football field for all your enemies to look through the weaknesses, the system, infiltrate it, so that by the time you implement it, they bust it. You understand? Now, that is where we misinterpret the tendering process. And legally, I can tell you it is a misinterpretation. People, they just think anything public, tender. And then the misinterpretation that Safaricom is a private. The biggest shareholder of Safaricom is the same government. Safaricom operates exclusively within the jurisdiction of this government. Therefore, you have a control. What if we gave it to some American or some Indian or some Chinese firm? Do we have a minute of a control or to our security things? So it is a good idea. And we are lucky that we have a president who, when people question, he's able to say, hold on, look into it. It happened with the railway. When people questioned the railway, said, oh, thievery, this is election thing, you want to refund. He said, hold on, you people, look at it. The same parliament looked at it, they observed it, they scrutinized, and then they said, fine, go ahead. Even this one, by saying, hold on, look into it, when you're satisfied, we move on. That is the way to go in a democracy. But for some people, they think a president should be such a person that what you touch is like a bakura. You touch, it works. You touch, there are things you also allow others to do their oversight role, their scrutiny, and that's what Parliament is doing now. Okay. When they finish, the whole process will carry on. But
there's a reason.
People don't want.
There's a reason they say. There's a reason. There's a saying out there that lawyers are liars. He talked about America.
I would have sued you if you are not my friend. On behalf of the lawyers of this country and of the world, lawyers are not liars.
No, you can sue me.
We brought for you a good constitution in this country.
Well, there's a saying out there, and
it was done by lawyers, being implemented by lawyers. Please.
And by the way, lawyers in Kenya have a terrible reputation of misusing.
Lawyers in Kenya are better. Lawyers in Kenya are better. They went to ICC round one. And
yes, but you know, Sophia, we're not here. We're not here for acting or for entertainment. We're here to, handle very serious issues. This is a country where people suffer on a daily basis. There's a lot of issues. There's a lot of, as I said earlier, there's a systemic problem with the economy. Economy refuses to grow, mostly because it's a twisted form of capitalism where a very few, elite, small, minute elite, 5%, 3% have interest in basically everything. There's a huge predatory mentality, culture of exploitation. It's all about self, and the rest of Kenyans suffer. And so he talked about America. There's no way the US government will go to a company like AT&T and just throw a tender willy-nilly as if you're awarding Boy Scout certificates. Kenyans under Article 35 of the Constitution have a right to really know what is being done, freedom of information, stage by stage. I'm not one for bureaucracy, but you cannot just wake up in the morning and just say, okay, Airtel is going to do, this and that, or Safaricom is going to do this and that, and it's going to take, face recognition and personal, details. At the same time, when we're doing a database, being run, I think, by Mheshimiwa Ruto's office, there's many questions that need to be asked There's absolutely many. Just the other day, the judge was saying that he took someone's piece of land, he's been fined, he should return it, etc. These are the realities. These are the things we must talk about. Okay. If at all we are a democracy and we're sitting here trying to enhance good governance for the sake of this country, for this country's moral fiber and moral health, and for this country's, prosperity today and tomorrow. It cannot just be about egos and let me just get this and get it by force.
Just a slight reaction on the lawyers. I would like you...
Lawyers have a terrible reputation.
And the Kenyans.
I've just told you.
And the world
and I've told millions.
The Kenyan lawyers are some of the best in the world. And take a simple test. Our President Uhuru Kenyatta, our Deputy President William Ruto hired foreign lawyers at the ICC. They are still sweating. General Ali hired a local lawyer. Okay? Kosgei hired a local lawyer. They are home. You got these things? Difference. You go there, you do the job, quick, tap.
Let's not use this show for theatrics.
So please.
Let's not use this show
for theatrics. You're the one who brought it up. Don't say theatrics and you're the one who brought up the whole lawyers and how terrible they are.
Again,
he was responding to your point, Benji.
I just feel that we should address our viewers respectfully.
But you're the one who brought it up, Benji.
Yeah, well, I've just told you. That's my analysis, that's my assessment, and that's what it is.
Relax.
But when it doesn't suit, it doesn't become theatrics.
It's not about
Let's move on to another point. A proposal by members of Parliament to amend House rules and procedures to allow for cabinet secretaries to come in and be grilled in Parliament over some of their work. It's a practice we've not seen, of course, under the Constitution or under the new laws. And as far as the cabinet runs, they are not politicians and they've been running their activities, and parliamentarians have not had that opportunity to talk to them or grill them or question them on some of the decisions they make. Do you think that is what we need? It's
standard practice around the world for a cabinet secretary in Washington to have to go and sit in front of Congress is a really painful and scary experience. As I said severally on this set, the problem with our Constitution is it is founded on a very fantastic assumption. Our Constitution was condensed with pieces of it from South Africa, from the American Constitution, what have you, and it makes the assumption that leadership is about integrity, that our leaders are going to mean well, that they're public servants, when in fact, our culture has not evolved to where leaders are about anything outside of serving self and serving tribe. So in that regard, members of Parliament, like MCAs, will just use that little power to some of these cabinet secretaries and use it for such things as extortion, for such things as settling, very narrow scores, let's nail her because she's a Luya, let's do this. This is really who we are as a people. It's disgusting, but look at chapter 6, look at many things, look at a lot of the ideals, look at the preamble in the Constitution. The whole assumption, Sophia, is that we are a progressive society, while in fact, are we? Answer is not.
So we need them to
Sophia, go Sophia, I'll give you a professional answer. This is not gerrymandering politics. Until March last year, we practiced the Westminster model, where you have the opposition and you have government.
Right.
The only thing we didn't have was a head of state. The head of state was equally the head of government, but it was purely like the British system. But then they have the Queen with the head of state. Now, we have practiced this since independence. After this election, we went the American style, where the president is elected, parliament is elected. And our constitution requires that it is parliament that plays the oversight role. It's parliament that looks at what the executive does. Now, what this means is that parliament collectively watches the government. You got it? Parliament, the whole of it. There's nothing like we are in our party, you are not in our party. But because we had lived too long in the Westminster model, we are still divided on the basis of opposition and government.
Right.
To the extent, therefore, that we would need the cabinet secretary to come in as a face of government. To come in as a face of government and be questioned on certain things. Now, as we are growing, it is a good thing. But in another after 2-3 elections, we will realize it is no longer in use. Because you have heard the president saying, my people are spending too much time in parliament answering questions. And again, this is because those who had committees, the committees that are supposed to get the information and take to parliament are deemed to be, this is opposition committee, this is a government committee.
Right.
The result is there's a disconnect. So we have a problem in implementing the constitution as it is, which will be cured through constant practice. When the divide narrows slowly and slowly, court goes and Jubilee goes and review our MPs so that immediately you're elected. For instance, you take, for instance, President Obama. There are certain policies he comes up with. He is opposed first by his own people. They tell him, no, Mr. President, you will not do that.
Yeah.
Now, that is the role they're supposed to play. But for now, we in Jubilee are clinging with the President Uhuru. Those who are in court are clinging their opposition. It will overgrow it.
Sophia, in so many words, he's just said basically what I've said. It was astounding to me over the weekend to see Deputy President Ruto in a rally in a high school saying in Kalenjin that you people, we are in government. You know that CORD is fighting for leftovers, and yet you are bringing down the same government that we're a part of. It is so backward. It is so real. It is so real. It was translated in the news. It was translated in the news by the media house. And you're speaking in Kalenjin. All of them. It's not contested. You know me, I'm not here. Unlike you, me, I'm not here to joke. So what I'm saying is that our politics is still so backward.
Benji.
It's still so tribal. You know, when you're talking serious issues,
okay, continue with your
yeah, when you live in a country where over 50% are living in poverty, there's really nothing to joke about when it comes to policy issues.
Okay, so he said, you say, yeah?
50% of Kenyans is 20 million human beings. And so when you are still doing ethnic mobilization, when you're doing raw data based on, you know, our people versus those people versus other people, and this is on the back of leaflets being distributed just last week. As you're giggling here on the sofa, leaflets being distributed just last week in Rift Valley asking Kikuyus to be kicked out.
On the sofa?
So, you know, sometimes you know, you have to ask yourself.
Why is your anger directed at Weda?
He has forgotten where I come from. We walk with stones.
No, it's not about that.
Do I stand far there? Stand there and...
No, it's not about that. When we're on serious issues, Benji, you know, on the way it is, we're on serious issues on the way it is. And, you know, we have to look at the country and say, really, are we moving forward? I just mentioned at the beginning of this show, with all these rallies and things going on, and with the kind of work that we do, which I suppose he also gets a phone call as well, we're getting calls from business people. There's a lot of anxiety, Sophia. People don't know what's coming next. And so, you know, we have to do justice to the issues to try and analyze them, you know, as expertly as possible, and to try to really give the issues the seriousness they deserve. When we start talking about comedy, you know, like, who's that, this nice kid from KU who used to be here, then we'll have a good laugh about it. But when it's serious issues, it's serious. We're talking about security cameras, where if you do the calculations, one of the cameras was costing 700 million shillings, I heard. Yeah. So we have to ventilate on these issues.
True, we do, and that is the purpose for the show. You wanted to say something?
Now, what I want to say is that tell those who are calling you, the most repeated word in the Bible is, do not be afraid. Tell them not to be afraid. Let them not. Fear is sickness. Tell them not to fear. Kenya is on the right track with the challenges that a country would have. Once the terrorists, we defeat them, Kenya will be back on track. Never fear. Live on hope. Okay?
One of the stories being reported today, 10 billion shillings squandered on 6 aides for each MCA. So the MCAs each have 6 assistants, and, you know, all of them being paid, and about 10 billion shillings going into that. And you have the transitional authority saying that they may have to be surcharged for the money that has already gone into this. In a country where wage bill and, you know, the state of things really, in as far as monetary, is one in question, does this...
No other individual other than His Excellency the President has been loudest screaming in frustration about the wage bill. But if you live in a country where everything is giggly and no one's really got to hold anyone to account, why shouldn't selfish politicians just take the leap and do it, and whoever is unhappy, go to hell? These are the issues I'm talking about. We have very legitimate problems. And again, I repeat, none other than Uhuru Kenyatta has gone out and has said he would rather even fire people and they go to court and whatnot. And even the pledges they gave for cutting of the salaries at 20% has not happened. No one is more frustrated than him, leave alone me. And I'm frustrated enough on all these crucial issues, yet there's no leadership. 6 assistants
per MCA.
Yes.
That's quite
let me assume, I'm praying and fasting that is not true.
What's the authority boss?
If it is true, let me tell you where the problem is. I said in this program that the Senate, after they were moralized that man,
yes,
the Senate weakened the governors so much that the governors, every governor must daily bribe
the MCAs.
The MCAs, in order for you to survive. At least the Senate realized that they are weakening the devolution more than the Jubilee is weakening it by actually attacking the governors. So they tried to make some ground through the Kericho one. Now these governors, these things they are done, not that the governors cannot stop it. Not that the governors want it, not that the governor budget for it, but they say, hey, I want 10, I want my girlfriend here, my boyfriend, my cousin. You say no, impeachment. So what do you do if you want to survive? Because survival is the first human instinct. The first instinct in every human being, including Ndolo, is survival. So you look and say, what do I do? You just want MCA personal assistants? Have them. It is unfortunate. The solution is let us allow the governors elected by people to sit firmly. And it will not be a problem. They'll be telling these MCAs, just like, because the president sits firmly, the MPs and the senator cannot just make any demand. But the moment they will start impeaching presidents anyhowly, they will get anything they want. So they should be able to see those aspects of the motion. Okay. It's an unfortunate thing.
I was at a forum a few months ago, I think it was 2 months ago, where a member of parliament in the Legal Affairs Committee in the 11th Parliament conceded that on a delegation to New York just 3 weeks ago, Tanzania's delegation, 6 people, Rwanda's delegation, 5 people, Kenya's delegation, 50-something people. And the reason I sat in that forum was for us to tackle these issues not from the top, not from the facade, the face, but from the root. There is a systemic, very deep problem in this country of a mismatch between the national ambition, the natural national ambition of a Kenyan versus a Tanzanian versus a Ugandan, and the available opportunity to pursue opportunity for self-actualization, if you may. And so you have to really look at what ails this country so that we understand that a lot of these MCAs just last year or the year before did not even have a bicycle. We have to understand human psychology. That is how Kenya works. Okay. A lot of the cabinet secretaries just 2 years ago were surviving on salary advance. And all of a sudden, you are at the treasury, you're in charge. So what are you going to do? I think you remember that the laptop thing went up in smoke because there were very, very serious issues on the tendering process.
All right.
And you've seen a lot of the analysis saying that 10% kickbacks and what have you, again, has gone back to standard procedure. All these things are very disturbing, but they beg for us to go deeper and look at what ails the society and what makes every person that rises to power, maybe with the exception of Uhuru, have the penchants for stealing money, for putting emoluments for themselves, for voting to increase salaries, for wanting more and more and never getting enough.
All right, our time is up.
Just 10 seconds. Let me tell you, when you are comparing Kenyans, I would like to remind you, compare us with our peers, our equals. Compare us with South Africans, Egyptians, Nigerians, Ghanaians. Don't compare us with Rwandese, Tanzanians, We are different. Our economies are different. The way we do things are different. You, as a Kenyan, you go to Tanzania to do business, they just throw you out because they can't match the pace.
All right. Because we were not here last week and did not get to talk about what unfolded at the Uhuru Park with Kidero Evans, the Nairobi governor, of course his fate still hangs in the balance, and as far as will he continue to hold that position, but also just seeing that booing, you know, and everything that has been said from his team. We did hear Raila, you know, just saying that he continues to support him, he's part of ODM, they're behind him. What does he need to do now? Because he finds himself in quite the tricky balance. When he addressed the public at Madaraka Day, a funny tweet was talking about how happy he was that there was no booing at that particular rally and enjoying the silence. But he's a governor that really needs some work to continue in his political career if he's ever to go far. You know, critics
well,
and
it's an
analysts
open
have argued.
secret. We've talked about here many times. It's an open secret. Evans Kidero is very unpopular. He's had a really, really difficult time settling down into office. The track record with the Nairobi City County government is wanting. Right from when he came in, all he had was a lot of protests against him. Against that, a lot of, you know, propaganda, if you may, justifying the protests, saying that you know, we're trying to clean out the ghost payrolls and whatnot. You know, just given the positioning of the county of Nairobi, and I've said it here many times, as you know, we even had moved to court against the governor. Nairobi County needs to be the example of leadership in this country, the strongest pillar when it comes to devolution. And somehow it's not happened, that he's unpopular. I mean, if you notice, even at the rally, Raila didn't even touch him. If you notice, Raila endorsed Bishop Margaret Wanjiru's son for Mathare, even carried Governor Hassan Joho's hand, and Hassan Joho is also a lackluster guy. But if you know anything about politics, protocol and power, for the party leader, someone commanding that kind of following, to basically put his hand on your shoulder. I'm told back in the day, in the days of Jaramogi, when you were campaigning for a seat, and Weda would know this more than anyone, Jaramogi used to say, when you see Weda, tell him that I send him my regards. And you were elected just based on that. And so Evans Kidero, I mean, you saw the former vice president begging, almost trying to shove down the throats the governor, and the crowd was not interested in how much money Evans Kidero has, in how much anything. I feel personally that this is just a crisis of his own making, an unnecessary crisis.
But he argued some people had been paid, had some politicians in ODM who don't like.
But anyone is going to argue anything. Okay. What I'm saying is that you don't have to operate. People need to learn how to practice power. You don't have to be, you know, you don't have to operate from a point of weakness to where people in your own coalition are saying it's better they lose a seat. You're accused of always being in State House, and all of these things have roots.
Fine.
Now, Sophia, to me, booing Kidero at Uhuru Park was not a big deal. It was not a big surprise. Because he went to waters that he ought not to have gone to. If it was a matter of, please let me finish. Let me finish. Kidero's number one problem. Kidero is running Nairobi County the way he was running Mumias. He's an ass guy. You know, he's a business executive, ass guy. He is not in contact with a common person along the streets of Nairobi. Those guys who stand around there, those guys who walk around there, those are the ones who will boo you there, whether they are hired or not. Okay. But it's good in politics, when something's happened, you say they were hired. He has difficulties. It's good in there. Secondly, as I've said on this notice, he tried to try to take Baba's shoes. Okay, Baba's support base in Nyanza. Tried to rival Baba. Again, that is mistake number 2. Mistake number 3, he is not playing populist politics. Mistake number 4, he is seen to be, he's breathing hot and cold. He is cold on COD, hot on Jubilee. All these put together, they go with his popularity. Okay. Which means if he has decided not to go second time, fine.
All right. Our time is up. Thank you very much for joining us. World Cup begins in 2 days. I don't know if you're football people, but which team are you supporting, if any?
I don't watch soccer. Okay. Because you talk about soccer.
Ambrose,
but I'll probably watch a few.
I don't support any particular team. I just wish that there is peace. People are on the lookout. There are no terrorist attacks, and the country, the world moves well.
I wish Ghana well, and drinking in this country is a serious culture. So let people drink less and have fun.
All right.
Because sometimes
let
it's
them
an
have
excuse
drivers.
now for just
Let them have drivers. Designated
mayhem.
drivers.
Yeah. So
Okay,
let's
and
drink
perhaps watch the games
responsibly.
at home and
Yes.
not crowd.
Yes.
Yes.
Who's your team, Sophia?
I'll tell you next time, Monday, after they've started the World Cup. Thank you for watching The Wedas and all of your feedback. I'll sample some of it later on. We're talking allergies in your health segment later on, so don't go away.